Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Gray Matter. We've got something really kind of off the beaten track for you today. A great guest. I think you're really going to enjoy today's program. And the credit goes to my wife. I was asking her recently. She said, I said, what do you think of the podcast? She goes, well, you never have anybody on there who talks about true crime. So guess what? We went out and found somebody really great who knows all about true crime, who's written about it and has been a lifetime investigator. His name is Nils Gravelius. Thank you for joining us today, Nils. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
It's my sincere pleasure, Leighton.
Yeah, and so the Nils has really done it all in investigations. He's a Los Angeles-based private detective who conducts investigations without regard to local or national borders, has the ability to deliver factual information quickly and efficiently from each of the 50 U.S. states and every continent in the world. And he's also written a series of wonderful books and has a new book coming out next year that we're going to talk about. We're also going to talk about some of the juicier topics in law and the things that are happening these days. But before we get there, as we always do, we're going to go to our framing aphorisms. The first one is from Thomas More, St. Thomas More, who's the patron saint of lawyers, you might know, who said, if you suffer your people to be ill-educated and their manners to be corrupted from their infancy, and then punish them for those crimes to which their first education disposed them, what else is to be concluded from this but that you first make thieves and then punish them? Next, from Edward Snowden, who said, when exposing a crime is treated as committing a crime, you are being ruled by criminals. From Dashiell Hammett, who's a person our guest knows all about, famous crime author who wrote, the problem with putting two and two together is that sometimes you get 4, sometimes you get 22. And finally, a little joke that many of you have probably seen. It's turned into a meme on the internet. Little boy says, Dad, I'm considering a career in organized crime. Dad responds, government or private sector? Well, who do we have on the show today? Well, as I said, Nils Gravelius. In the early 90s, Nils went into private practice as a private detective, keeping offices in Pasadena, California. And with this move, he was involved in the investigations of Bruce McNall. Hockey fans will know all about him. Famously brought Wayne Gretzky from Alberta to Los Angeles. David Hemmings and John Daly, operators of Hemdale Pictures for the U.S. bankruptcy trustee. In the late 1990s, Nils investigated the Wonderland Avenue murders, or more correctly, the cover-up of the murders and the connections between Los Angeles City Hall and organized crime. And it is the Wonderland case for which Nils is best known. But he's also conducted kidnapping, robbery, homicide, assault, hijacking, extortion, workplace theft, mass tort, and conflict of interest investigations for a variety of clients, including industry, private trusts, law firms, financial institutions, and select private parties. And he's still a private investigator today. His firm is he's still going, and so we're so pleased to have him here on the program. The place I want to start, Nils, predictably, this has been so much in the news, is we want to talk about this little case involving Jeffrey Epstein. Now, as an investigator, we're interested to get your take. Now, do you agree with what we're being told now that Epstein killed himself? And more importantly, perhaps, why is the public so fascinated with the Epstein case? And do you think that the Epstein case and disclosure of its details to the public is something important, like beyond mere titillation, the normal titillation people have with crime? What are your thoughts about this case?
Well, Leighton, I will say that it looks like an intelligence operation using crime as part of its element.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Acosta, who prosecuted Epstein in Florida in 2008, said as much as that this was an intelligence operation, and this was in response to somebody asking him why Jeffrey Epstein received so light a sentence. And I will ask a few Socratic questions of you, of your audience, to try to bring this into a sharper light. I spent a bit of time in counterintelligence and U.S. forces after being a grunt in the infantry. And what if the surviving member of the team was actually the boss, the case officer? Ghislaine
Mm-hmm.
Maxwell.
Mm-hmm.
Has anybody here ever taken a hard look at Maxwell's father, Robert Maxwell, who was a Checo refugee who wound up in British forces during World War II and then afterwards had sort of an international life of intrigue on one level or another, and ultimately was alleged to have committed suicide. But somebody said the same thing of one of our CIA directors, William Colby,
Mm-hmm.
who took a canoe trip and was later found dead pretty close to his canoe, I believe, allegedly of a suicide. I don't know that Maxwell or Colby committed suicide, but of Bob Maxwell, I will say that his profile looks like either Mossad or MI6. I'm inclined toward MI6, and I'll tell you why.
Mm-hmm.
If this was a Mossad operation, it wouldn't have been screwed up, would it?
Yeah, they're pretty good.
Right. So, what if Epstein is the hotelier and the operations officer is Ghislaine, and that's why Ghislaine didn't go to France or Switzerland or England when she was wanted? The French were happy to hide Ira Einhorn for 36 years from U.S. authorities. So it tells me that she may have feared somebody if she were out in the bush.
Mm.
And when we look at this, the guests that they had down there at Pitcairn Island or whatever you want to call this place in the Caribbean, they were probably the object of this to draw people in to a classic honey trap, compromise
Mm.
situation, and pre-qualifying themselves as men of low morals. Men of low morals are more likely to betray their nation,
Mm-hmm.
more
Mm-hmm.
likely to betray their cohort, more likely to betray their company if they're a big corporate man like Warren Buffett or Bill Gates. I don't know that Buffett ever went down there, but I know that Bill Gates is accused of going there, and many
Yeah.
other important men. Uh, and by volunteering to go down there and be involved in this milieu, they're identifying themselves in advance as willing and vulnerable at the same time. It's a classic thing. I don't know
Yeah.
that it's an intelligence operation. It just stinks to hell. And as to whether or not Epstein dangled himself, I think that he actually did, but it was probably under orders. Did you ever take a look at Tartaglione, who was his cellmate up until a few hours before he was found dead? Nicholas Tartaglione was a Long Island police officer who was in pretrial confinement for four hits for the cartels, for the
Mm-hmm.
drug cartels. So Epstein was supposed to have been on suicide watch of some sort. Why would you lock a man like that up with a known assassin?
Right.
It beggars belief, doesn't it now, Leighton Grey?
Mm-hmm.
So
Interesting.
by asking these Socratic questions, I hope in the classic mode of Socrates, our audience knows a little bit more, thinks a little bit more about these things. And then with my own FBI, the FBI occupies roughly the same space as the Mounties. The
Mm-hmm.
Mounties can be everything from territorial police to counterintelligence officers, can't they now?
They sure can,
And,
and they have been,
and they
especially
have been.
recently. Yeah.
And 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 what if the FBI took this from the criminal realm and put it in the counterintelligence realm? So every bit
Mm-hmm.
of it, or most of it, is out of sight. So in February, when our Attorney General orders the Southern District of New York FBI supervising special agent Jim Dennehy to turn over all of the evidence to her office immediately, Mr. Dennehy resigns the next day, tenders his resignation, and 2 days later, our own esteemed, vaunted New York Times then drives his getaway car and says that the reason that Dennehy actually resigned was nothing over Epstein. It was actually because Donald Trump had pardoned the corrupt mayor of New York City, and that Dennehy was wildly offended by this. Now, Mr.
Mm.
Dennehy was not at all offended by the previous president pardoning his entire bloody family and 4,000 other people. That didn't offend Mr. Dennehy. He didn't grab the hem of his skirt and go flying out of the building when that occurred, did he? So,
Yeah.
further in the mode of Socrates, should we ask what kind of a special agent Mr. Dennehy was? Was he a territorial police officer? Did he bring in child sex traffickers? Did he go after narcotics men, major fraud, bank robbers? No, 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 no. Mr. Dennehy, from start to finish, Leighton Grey was a counterintelligence man within the Bureau.
Mm. Well,
And that's how
playing Thrasymachus to your Socrates, let me ask you this:
I'm not.
What do you think about the alleged Mossad connection? Some people, Tucker Carlson famously, has said publicly that he buys the idea that Epstein, who is of Jewish background, was connected to Mossad and may have been a Mossad agent, and that may have been his role in this, let's call it tender trap, this island that you spoke of. What do you make
Hey,
of that? Is that a lot of nonsense, or do you think there might be some credence to that?
it's a possibility, but it's not a probability. Again, Leighton, when was the last time Mossad screwed something up like this?
I know they
The
did a good job
trajectory
with
of it,
With Eichmann.
right? So 2006, 2007, Prince Andrew blunders into the whole thing,
Yeah,
and whomever's running it, probably MI6 and CIA, says,
yeah.
"Oh, we've got Prince Andrew coming in. Is this something we want to risk? Do we want all of Fleet Street chasing up our skirts after this?" And that's when it started to unravel.
Hmm.
Mossad doesn't screw things up like this, and I couldn't see Mossad running a mass honey trap operation in order to bring in, Bill Gates and Steve Jobs or whoever else
Hmm.
was going down there.
Yeah.
This is classic MI6. Maybe DGSE owns shares in it. Who knows? That's the French version of MI6. But uh, once again, Tucker's a great guy. I enjoy his show. He's about 70% right. And, bless him, let him have his theory. I don't think it's Mossad. When
Yeah.
Mossad screws something up, there's dead bodies everywhere on their way out. I mean, that's their idea of risk management.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
you know why Mossad doesn't like Jehovah's Witnesses, don't you, Leighton?
No, please tell us.
Because Mossad doesn't like any witnesses.
Ah, interesting.
So
Well, so let's talk about maybe this in a 10,000-foot view, and ask the question again in a Socratic way: is this case important? And I preface that by saying this: to a lot of people, it seems like the Epstein case is like pulling on a string that's unraveling something that's connected to people's fascination with something called the deep state. And if the case is important, if it is, and I'm asking the question, if it's important, is that why? What do you think about that?
I think what's important about it, and yes, it is important, Leighton. It's one more time our intelligence services have broken every single premise and promise underlying the foundation of this representative republic here in the United States. They employed, if my theory is true, they employed a man who liked to take sexual advantage of young girls and used that as the bait in their rat trap
Mm,
without regard to what might become of these young girls. It's
that's
roughly
dark.
akin to us having a representative republic here, and we want to use petroleum in our commerce, and then we establish a 8,000 mile petroleum supply chain to the Middle East, and then violate every premise and principle underlying the foundation of the republic to defend that supply chain, up to and including sending thousands of our own men to their deaths to to protect that supply chain rather than drilling for petroleum here.
Right. Hmm.
And
Hmm.
how many thousands of Arab and Persian and Assyrian people were killed to protect that supply chain?
Mm, no. So in
How
this vein,
how moral
yeah,
are we?
yeah,
Uh,
and in that vein, let's talk about this now. People like Dan Bongino, a huge following on his program, and people like Kash Patel, who were very outspoken, talking about things like the Epstein list existed, right? Saying that Epstein obviously was murdered. Now that they're on the inside of government, they're changing their tune. Um, and as an investigator, what do you make of this? Does this make you suspicion, or is your trust in people like Cash Patel and Dan Bongino sufficient to take what they say at face value? In other words, they're saying we've seen the evidence. You haven't seen the evidence. We've seen the evidence. And if you saw what I saw, you would believe what I say. How does that strike you as an investigator?
I believe them to the extent that I believe they haven't seen everything, and I
Yeah.
believe that CIA and FBI are hiding most of it from them, hoping to outlast them. Dennehy's last instruction to his
Wow. Can they
people
do that, Nils? Can they actually do that?
Dennehy's last instruction to his
Wow.
people was to dig in and outlast them. So if they put it
Really?
over into the counterintelligence realm, I'll give you a good example. John Durham was enshrined as a special counsel to investigate the Crossfire Hurricane situation, and he was
Right.
shown only 10% of the material we found out just a few months ago because they put it over into the counterintelligence realm. They compartmentalized it, they hid it, they destroyed it, that sort of thing, in order to avoid exposure. And that is still coming out. My belief is we're not done with the Epstein material, despite whatever
Yeah.
Dan Bongino or Cash Patel say. There will
Hmm.
be further statements on this. I'll bet you a
Yeah.
ham sandwich, Leighton Grey. I'll even go to Alberta, Canada to pay off the bet.
Be happy to have you.
It'd be my sincere pleasure, sir.
Here's the next question, and that is, do you think that we're ever going to get to the bottom of the Epstein situation, or is it going to be another, JFK? Is it going to be another Watergate? Is it going to be something like that where, we're going to be promised answers, but we never really get them? What do you think about that?
Well, uh, I know quite a bit about the JFK and RFK situations and the MLK situation and the Malcolm X situation. And my belief is that a lot of it is impounded from us just to be impounded to keep us wondering and guessing.
Mm,
Ambiguity is a valuable, valuable resource of our intelligence and security services. Whether it's
interesting.
them massaging the fools that we vote into office and manipulating the public,
Right.
or in the conduct of actual operations calculated to protect us.
Hmm. Hmm.
On both counts, ambiguity and secrecy is valuable. Our intelligence
Mm,
services, your intelligence service, they inventory secrets, they classify them, sometimes not just to protect the source of the information or the information is so wildly dangerous or whatever. It's because it is political capital. It's like the gold
mm,
bars that are stacked up in the basement at Fort Knox, Kentucky, Leighton,
right.
with espiocrats who traffic in them with this faction, that faction within government. And you can see the ties all the way back to the Roman Empire with the Praetorian Guard manipulating the Senate, the consul, the this emperor, that sort of thing. That's what we have here. Now, I use the term espiocrat quite purposefully. There are some national security writers who like to call these people spooks, Leighton, and I want to
I've
clear
heard
up a
that
bit of
term.
ambiguity here.
What does it mean?
Well, an espiocrat is some glib suit who always seems to have the correct answer when he appears on, MSNBC or CBC
Right.
or that sort of thing,
Hmm.
and tells you you don't know all this and we know it and don't try this at
Yeah.
home and blah 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 blah
I
blah.
know the type.
Okay,
Yeah.
a spook, Mr. Gray, is a man or a woman who adopts an alias to cross borders and conduct secret, dangerous operations against the enemy. That's a
Ah,
spook.
right. Okay.
And for a national security writer to call some fat blue falcon like James Clapper a spook is offensive to the men and women who've taken the risks to protect the West.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Dangerous,
During
dangerous
World War
jobs.
II, Winston
Yeah.
Churchill and FDR employed men who would lay you low in a ditch if they had to protect the West. They would do it. They'd kill men in the middle of the night, and they did it
Yeah.
many times. In fact, FDR allowed Churchill to dispatch MI5 and MI6 men to the United States to conduct combat operations within the United States prior to us entering the war, which would have been an impeachable offense had anybody known. But
Right.
it had to be done because the Nazis were dangerous sons of bitches and had to be
Yeah.
killed. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I won't traffic in cute euphemism, Leighton. When we have enemies, they need to be neutralized. I don't want to play badminton with them.
Yeah.
I want to
Yeah.
drown them like two-headed puppies.
Yeah. Well, I read all the James Bond novels, and I'm convinced that they could not have written by it could have been written by anybody who wasn't an MI6 former MI6 agent. Um, I want to turn to another story that you've been looking at, Nils, and get you to comment on. And this is this Idaho college students who were murdered. A very, very sad, tragic case. And there's a plea deal that was made here. This is a case involving Brian Kohlberger, the 30-year-old accused of fatally stabbing 4 University of Idaho students in their apartment in 2022. He's agreed to a plea deal in his quadruple murder case, skirting the death penalty and bringing a possible end to the years-long legal procedures against him. What do you make of this? This seems to be almost an inversion, a perversion of what we might call justice. But what's your take on this as a career investigator?
I think under Idaho law, the court was required to accept his guilty plea. Within their codified law, they can't put him on trial for his life if he pleads.
Yeah.
Um, I would be the sort of judge, and I've seen this done before. Ron George did this with the Hillside Stranglers in the early 80s. I would fire the prosecutors and bring the state attorney general in to bring the case or whatever, but I'm a little bit of a rebel, Leighton. Um,
Do
Under
tell.
Idaho law, with a plea like that, and this is why Koberger took the plea, he
Mhm.
doesn't have to give an allocution.
Right.
Allocution is a $20 word that means a full recitation of your crimes and why you committed them. Now,
Mhm.
you'll
Mhm.
notice he was unflinching when the family members of the victims came in to give their impact statement,
Yeah.
to
He was
state how
almost
they felt.
psychopathic, wasn't he? The way he, yeah, very
Leighton, he
stoic.
enjoyed it.
Mm.
He enjoyed every bit of this, and my sense of him is he is an MDSO psychopath. MDSO stands for
Mm.
mentally disordered sex offender.
Uh,
He will be defending his virginity in ISP for the rest of his life. Uh, he um, he gave that plea because he didn't want a full exposition of his pornographic search terms to be shown in court. He
oh,
wants to maintain some tie to his poor parents. Now, his parents are not to blame here. His parents
yeah,
are classically educated mental health professionals and very decent people. It is
really?
my belief that Koberger, instead of getting negative reinforcement for bad acts at home, got it from social media and searchable internet pornography. In order for a man to become a psychopath in his developmental years, he has to have random reward for negative acts. And young people now get that from the idiotic things in their telephones, their iPads, that sort of thing, their
Yeah.
interaction with other disordered young people, and searchable internet
Mm.
pornography.
Yeah. Yeah. Nils, I had some experience with this type of person in my career as a criminal lawyer. I represented one man who um, nearly, essentially decapitated his girlfriend because he had a fantasy about having sex with her while she bled out. Another client I had, hit his wife over the head with a hammer and then proceeded to stuff her in a wood chipper. Um, these sort of psychopathic personalities, sociopathic personalities, um, there's almost when you meet them and you come close to them, as I'm sure you have, there's almost an inevitability to them, and that they were always going to end up in this way. What do you think about that? Do you think that the people who are capable of this type of heinous crime are just born, like they sort of come out of the chute, and then they're developed environmentally, or do you think there's a way to prevent people from from who are have these tendencies, these murderous tendencies, from becoming these horrible killers?
I don't I don't believe, Leighton, that men or women are born psychopaths. But my belief is that when people are exposed to things young, trauma young, and then
Right.
random reward for negative acts, you can certainly funnel them in that direction. The intervention has to be a cultural intervention,
Yeah.
whereby as a culture we eschew disorder. I'll give
Yeah.
you a good example of something here. Back around 1988, 89, the United States government and California government launched what I can only characterize as a vast psyop, a psychological warfare operation against tobacco use.
Yes.
About,
Hmm.
I don't know, 60% of our population then were tobacco addicts, nicotine addicts, and I was one.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was a two
Both
pack
my
a day
parents were
man.
smokers. Yeah.
Right. I loved them. They were fantastic. But I gave up on my own accord. I didn't need the government telling me that it was bad for me. I knew it was bad for me.
Yeah.
But we're down to about 11% of our population now are nicotine addicts, and they didn't outlaw nicotine. They made it expensive, and they bombarded you with things about how unhealthy it was, and they
Right.
made it so that it was déclassé to be a nicotine user.
Hmm. Hmm.
We could, this vast intelligence apparatus that made us put us at each other's throats in the United States and Canada over COVID-19 could
Yeah.
be used to head us in a better direction, I believe.
That is a brilliant point. I've never heard that before. What a great point that is. Yeah.
Well, didn't they use the intelligence apparatuses in this country to make people insecure over COVID-19, and one group wants you to
Mm.
do this, the other group
Yeah.
wants you to do that, and people stayed home, were insecure. They overdosed on Netflix content and concentrated cannabis. They destroyed the public school systems, that sort of thing. God bless the Canadian truckers with their horns. What
Yeah.
a bunch of rugged individuals they are. God bless them, right? Every one of
Hmm.
them, even the ones who aren't Christians, uh, you know, going into Ottawa with their horns blaring. That was a fantastic act of civil rebellion, and Trudeau, for his part, will go down in
Mm.
history as a martinet, a thin
Yeah.
pimpernel of a leader.
Nils, the two main organizers of the trucker convoy are facing 7 and 8 years. They've been convicted of mischief, and they're both facing lengthy prison terms. That's really astonishing, isn't it?
Well, if
When you
it were not
consider,
an act
in
of
our country,
war,
people like rapists and killers don't get sentences that long anymore.
If it were not an act of war, Leighton Grey, I might be tempted to deploy some of my mechs up to the Dominion of Canada and abscond with them, bring them to free territory down here to down here in Baja, Canada, as it
I,
were.
I wonder if they thought about doing that.
Uh,
But
it
they're
would
very
be a
principled people. I think they're prepared to face the music, as it were. But
well, maybe
that
President Trump will pardon them. Who knows? We can hope,
wow,
right?
wouldn't that be wonderful? So, folks, we've been talking with Nils Gravelius. He's a career investigator, very renowned. He's been doing this for decades, and he's also written some very hard-boiled detective novels featuring a fictional character named Luke Fitz. I mentioned off the top of the show that my wife is a big true crime addict. I love crime novels. I'm reading and working through some of the works of Josephine Tay, who you would know as a nom de plume. But we were talking about Dashiell Hammett off the top of the show. But anyway, Nils has written a series of books entitled Skullduggery, A City of Devils, Sub Rosa, and Suicide Jack and the One-Eyed King.
Well, and
And
also horseplay.
yeah, so these books sound just wonderful, Nils. And I wanted to talk to you. Obviously, we're going to talk about, I also want to ask you about your new book that's coming out next year. But I want to take a bit of a detour here because I'm very interested in what made you turn to writing these, these crime novels in a series like this. What was your inspiration for doing that?
Bad fiction was the inspiration. I mean, seeing the stuff that was being pumped out of publishing houses, it was supposed to be hard boiled and
Yeah,
that
yeah.
sort of thing, and it's written as if it was like some junior high school social studies teacher's idea of hard boiled. I'll tell you, Leighton, when I wrote my first novella, it was about, I don't know, 60 pages long. I was trapped in a hotel room in Copenhagen. I was in Denmark searching for two prostitutes who had witnessed a kidnapping in Hollywood. I had
Wow.
about 18
That must have been an
hours.
interesting conversation.
I mean, well, I'm not a hairdresser, Leighton. I don't, so um, I sat down at my laptop and got it going and just, spun a yarn. And I think my favorite crime writer of the past is Raymond Chandler,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
who
Brilliant.
wrote about Los Angeles and was English
Yeah.
educated and had a particular view. He wrote a book about a treatise on how to write hard boiled. It's called The Simple Art of Murder.
Mm,
But Raymond Chandler's writing is like Hammett in a way, but his diction, his elocution is completely different.
yeah. Yeah.
Um, uh, uh, I will just make up a Chandler for you. I rounded the third floor landing. In the stairwell, I could smell broken hearts and fried food and dust. And I could see up the hallway the blue, blinking glare of a television set, and I knew I was at the right place. I approached gingerly, lest she know that I was coming for her. But I didn't have to, because the door was already open. And when I stepped before it, she was seated behind a desk, hewn of glass the size and shape of a coffin. She was smoking a cigarette in a holder as long as an umbrella. She was wearing lacy black underwear, despite her 80 years. She exhaled a puff of smoke that stank of cannabis. She looked up, she looked down, she said, "I need a man." That's Raymond Chandler over and over
Well,
again.
folks, I'm sure
I,
you've got the picture.
I, it's
So,
it's it's emotional and
yeah.
emotive.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It's sentimental, but it's never maudlin. It's violent, with good people doing terrible things and bad people
Yeah.
occasionally doing something remarkably
It's
good.
actually hard boiled, right? Yeah.
Incredibly.
Yeah.
With
And
enough,
so in your
yeah,
style
you
of
chip your
writing,
teeth on the lines in the books. What can I say, Leighton Grey?
that was a pretty good impression, I have to say, having read some of his books. So does your style lean more that way, or do you lean more towards a Dashiell Hammett? What is your style of writing? I have not yet read your books yet. I plan to. Um, and if I were going to if I were going to start reading your books, which one would I start with?
Mossad
In
Jack and the One-Eyed King is quite good,
okay, okay,
and it's topical. It deals with the narcotics dealer.
yeah.
Um, if you must, I don't think much of those novels. It's
This,
hard to. I didn't have the direction that I have now. I mean, the editor that I had then was quite gifted. She kept me from deleting
yeah,
all of the stuff I'd written.
yeah,
And Holly Clearman is her name. She's a fantastic woman, great editor, that sort of thing. But when I headed into writing my professional memoir, I got a different editor. I was required to by my publisher, and
Mm.
we took it in a different direction. Sometimes having a good editor can help you be a better writer. Um,
Yeah.
it's
Ideally, that's yeah.
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 So my style is entirely my own. I like to read a lot, and I was
You don't
badly
say.
injured once on a job, and a friend of mine who was an abstract painter, Joseph Ferris, came to me with every volume of Gibbon. And while I was recovering from this injury, and said, "You have no education, none whatsoever." Well, he had a master's in fine arts, so he gave me these books, and he said, "Read these while you recover, idiot."
Wow.
And so I read Gibbon's Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire.
Wow.
It's that inverse sentence structure. Things are seemingly didactic, but it's expressed in deeply emotional terms. I'll give an example. On the ninth page of the abridged edition, he talks about Emperor Severus in the 3rd century regarding Scotland. And Gibbon writes of this Roman emperor's consideration of Scotland. The bearers of the most fertile climates of the world turned with disdain from the wind-swept hills and frozen heaths over which deer were chased by a troop of naked barbarians.
Yeah.
Everything is packed into that sentence. That's
Yeah.
Scotland in an entire
Yeah.
sentence, right? And it's
Nobody
not
writes like that.
improved a bit at all since. In fact, it may be
Yeah.
worse now. It
Yeah.
is now a population of welfare eunuchs and heroin addicts who want complete independence from the crown, yet they want to keep their faces planted in the public trough of Great Britain.
Hmm.
They don't want independence.
No.
They want to be babysat,
Yeah.
which is sad.
That
My mother's family are Canadian Scots. Yeah, it's
that
sad.
that
It truly is sad.
that story that you told me about how you were bedridden and were going through Gibbon reminded me of the novel The Daughter of Time. If you recall that, where the investigator has had a spinal injury, his name is Grant, and he decides to he's encouraged to delve into the history of Richard III, and he goes and reinvestigates the murders of his nephews, the famous murders of his nephews, the Shakespearean version, and in the end acquits him of the murders. Very fascinating book. It's called The Daughter of Time. So that sort of reminded me of that situation. And when you say you don't like your novels, like that reminds me of another sort of famous crime writer, Norman Mailer, who didn't think much of The Naked and the Dead. The rest of us certainly did. He thought his better book was The Executioner's Song, which was more in your, yeah, yeah, more
I
in
hate
your
it.
line. Yeah,
Norman Mailer kept falling in love with murderers. He fell in love with Gary Gilmore. He fell in love with
yeah,
Jack Henry Abbott. They were both psychopaths.
yeah,
What Mailer was trying to do was be in love with these men in the way that Truman Capote was in love with Perry Smith, but without
yeah,
actually consummating the act. I won't get any
yeah,
more specific than that.
yeah, yeah.
Capote was
Now,
10 times the writer that Mailer was.
mhm.
Um, bless both their memories. What can I
Yeah.
say?
Yeah, Capote certainly is a gifted prose writer. There's no question about it.
Yeah, no.
It's a shame he didn't write more, actually. But speaking of writing more, we would be remiss if we didn't talk about your new book that's coming out next year. It's called The Last Lawman: True Stories of a Private Detective. I love the cover. The cover is of you in a trench coat, or someone in a I presume this is you in a trench coat with your back with a hat, very 1940s, for sort of Raymond Chandler look to this. What's the new book about, and why did you write it?
I got permanently banned from social media in 2022 for my politics. I was
Mm,
suspended from X. I mean, I couldn't post on X. I still had an account, but it was dormant, and I was
mhm.
completely banned from Facebook.
Why
Um,
was that? Why were you banned?
stochastic terrorism is the clinical
Ah,
term.
I
It's
see.
just the hard left,
Yeah.
all of these lovely hippies with the daffodils in their hair. The moment that they achieve perfect political power, they rule with an iron fist, Leighton. I
Yes.
think you've seen that
Yeah.
maybe up in the Dominion of Canada.
That's what's happening right now in our country. Yeah.
So I sat down and started banging out my professional memoir. Uh, I was a scout in the infantry. I did 3 tours in Korea in the 80s. I worked in the DMZ, the border between North and South Korea, interdicting North Korean infiltration. And at a certain point, I got recruited to counterintelligence. I will say that I'm not Audie Murphy. I'm not some great heroic man. I have a fondness for the bottle that only became more pronounced as I got older. And
Mm.
so in counterintelligence, I think my last evaluation report said all of Mr. Grevelius' on-duty effectiveness is compromised by his off-duty behavior, associations, and activities. So, I got out and I was going to maybe be a lawyer or
Isn't
be a
isn't that a
cop.
prerequisite for a hard-boiled private investigator, though, is to be is to be a
Man,
heavy drinker?
I don't it was accidental. I was a young guy. I was, nigh on 24 when I got out.
Mm.
I went in the Army on my 17th birthday with my father laughing at me. My father was a veteran of the Korean War and World War II, and he said the Army's a chicken shit outfit, but they will beat the hell out of you, and you'll be begging to come home in 2 weeks. So I stayed gone 7 years, went all over the world and saw some interesting I learned a lot. So, out at loose ends, I started picking up bail jumpers for a bondsman, fugitives who hadn't come to court. So I learned a bit of that. He was a veteran police detective, and I learned how to track men who don't have credit or driver's licenses or fixed addresses, footpads, pimps, pickpockets, drug dealers, stick-up boys, burglars, whatever. I learned a bit of that, and then I got recruited by the Pinkertons. A lot of people,
Ah, the
yeah, the
renowned
Pinkertons
Pinkertons. Yeah.
is the oldest private investigative service in the world. It was founded by um, uh, a fugitive from Scotland. Essentially, the Crown wanted to hang him for his labor activities. Landed in Chicago in the 1850s. His background was in labor activism and school teaching, and he decided to found a detective service because Chicago was such a pile of garbage. And they said, well, you
Yeah.
can't do that. You're not an expert. You're not the police. Well, those are famous last words. I'm going to point something out here. When somebody says to you, well, you can't do that, Leighton. You don't know anything about criminal law, that kind of thing. All right.
Yeah.
David Sterling and Paddy Mayne, the two men who really put together the Special Air Service during World War II in North Africa, taught
Mm.
each other and their men how to parachute, jumping out of trucks moving at 60 miles an hour through the desert. That's how they
Really?
learned to parachute. They
Wow.
experted themselves. We over rely on lawyers and experts and
Yeah.
everything else. These men can bloody well do whatever they want. I mean, look at the Dominion of Canada was founded by rugged individuals on a
Yeah.
hostile frontier. The
Yeah.
Indians were rugged individuals, the Frenchies were rugged individuals, the Scots were rugged individuals, and I will observe that the introduction of social welfare benefits like a national health care, that's like the gateway drug to
Yeah.
cutting the balls off every Canadian man right
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great to have health care. Well, bloody well go buy it yourself. If you're
Mhm.
walking around the block with your hat in your hand demanding that other people, but you're not a rugged individual.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's my criticism. I'll shut my mouth about that right now,
No,
Creighton.
you raise a great point. I mean, we've sort of become a society of two camps: those who exploit the work of others, and those whose work is exploited. And that's you're right about that gateway. Once we enter into that, and we sort of abdicate responsibility for ourselves to a state that redistributes rights and privileges and wealth, we're on the road to tyranny, aren't we?
That is my belief.
Yeah.
And no matter how many men are in the wagon, I'd still rather be walking and pulling than ride the wagon myself.
Right, right. Now about the title, I must ask you, The Last Lawman. Why The Last Lawman? Do you see the private detective, what you were schooled in, what you became, as something that is disappearing?
No, the opposite. The police in big cities like Los Angeles, their primary mission now, despite whatever they would otherwise be inclined to do, is protecting the political class from their constituents.
Oh, yes.
They're
Yeah,
not solving crimes. They want to.
yeah, Yeah.
All right. And I think you could find the same thing in Toronto. I bet you could
Hmm.
find this with a lot of your Mounties who
Yeah.
would rather be chasing criminals, drug dealers, illegal alien absconders, terrorists, that sort of thing. And Carney and Trudeau would have them chasing after honest truckers
Yeah.
or farmers or oil workers who have a disagreeing opinion over transvestism or the obesity, the curious obesity caused by purple hair, things like that. Anyway, uh, uh,
Right.
uh,
As- You
so
know, the other aspect to this about police work that's astonishing is seeing some of the ramifications of the, let's say, perversion of police work. And we saw this recently in Los Angeles, where a police officer with a prior criminal case is now accused of taking part in a violent home invasion, kidnapping for ransom, that prosecutors say targeted two people in the middle of the night. And this is really shocking. Um, According to LA County District Attorney's Office, 37-year-old Eric Halem of Porter Ranch allegedly entered a Koreatown apartment with another man, 2:30 in the morning, and the two are accused of handcuffing the victims, transferring funds from their cryptocurrency account, and stealing cash and jewelry before fleeing. So we're seeing some police officers are saying, the hell with this, the hell with defund the cops. I'm just gonna I'm just gonna go to the other side, and I'm gonna use all the techniques I learned in police work to do crime. Is this concerning to you?
you were supposed to ask me if I was surprised, Leighton.
Tell us,
Just
are
a
you surprised?
Just a few years ago, a veteran LAPD captain got caught running a cannabis grow operation up in Sylmar
Mm,
back in the day before it had become legal for recreational use when it was just still quote unquote medical marijuana.
right. Yeah.
Um, Now, it doesn't surprise me. Let me tell you what happened with the suits at City Hall. They came up with an ideal profile of a police officer who wouldn't make trouble. He is an innocuous man or woman with no particular ambition other than obeying orders. And many of them are diminutive people who can't engage in fisticuffs or use a baton or a sap or anything to quell a subject. And when something heads in a bad direction, it goes instantly to gun battle because they have no physical ability in doing all of these things. I am a rarity as a private detective, Leighton, in that I don't do cheating husbands and insurance claims.
Okay. Yeah.
I I I've rounded up fugitives. I've done it in foreign countries. I've brought men back at gunpoint from Mexico. Uh, working with the San Marino police, I brought in an MDSO psychopath who was a one-man crime wave in Pasadena. And because he had once been a Pasadena police cadet and everybody thought he was amusing as a mortgage broker back when we were having our mortgage situation, whatever, he uh, he could get away with nearly anything. He had 9 DUIs in 18 years and never did more than 6 hours in stir. Um, he stole with
Incredible.
both hands. He bragged about it. He got away with it. Well, finally, he raped a woman, and then while in our Los Angeles County Jail, after me and a San Marino police detective took him at gunpoint, he tried to hire the Mexican outfit to kill his victim and her children. Now he was acquitted of that crime. The jury didn't see fit to convict him of that. Well, he was convicted of rape and a number of other crimes and did 10 years in prison. He's out now and he's living on the public dime. He has his face in the public trough and pretends to be a college student who wants to be a lawyer. And this state is run by the sort of mincing Felch sisters who would actually allow a convicted rapist and sex offender to be a lawyer. I mean, we have illegal aliens who are allowed to be lawyers in this state.
I seem to
I know
recall
you're
that
very
was Ted
surprised.
Bundy's plan.
Right, sure, why not? Our borders are porous, and if you really look at what California as a state has become, this political entity is like a colony of Mexico with a
Yeah.
paper-thin upper class, a middle class that is fighting to save its own life, and a vast pool of working men and working women who are dependent on the government for this, the government for that,
Yeah.
who have been gaslit into buying all of this, and that's how they get the same thing done over and over again. And it's also my belief that The social welfare system is used to deliver votes to the plantation class Democrats at the top.
Right.
All of the derelict class, the convict class, the welfare class get ballots automatically, and somehow they all find their way in and all marked for the Democrat cult. So,
Mhm. Mhm.
yeah, that's what we're up against.
Mhm.
So my practice as a private detective has been very different from most. The Pinkerton service is that way, though. In the Pinkertons, we protected defense plants. We conducted industrial undercover operations. We did surveillance of big con game gangs. We went after counterfeiters, things like that. There would
Mhm.
be no Secret Service and no FBI without the Pinkertons because those intelligence and security agencies sprung out of the Pinkertons. Alan Pinkerton himself protected Abe Lincoln during the Civil War. Lincoln was assassinated after the Pinkertons were ordered to withdraw and the army took over protecting our president. And he got killed. Alan
Yeah.
Pinkerton suppressed at least two bona fide assassination attempts. He
Mm.
was a very capable man, Alan Pinkerton was.
Yeah. Are the Pinkertons still in operation, or is it
Well,
defunct?
to some extent or another, there is a presence. It's not as great as it once was. When I was brought into the Pinkertons, it was almost as if I was joining the Irish Republican Army or something. It was
Yeah.
go to a series of phone booths, meet this man, don't tell him who you're meeting, things like that, all these security measures. Well, the Pinkertons quite necessarily use that to protect their operatives, protect their clients. Back in the 80s, pre internet, they were using a 19th century means of analog secret communications. I won't give up how it worked, but it was highly effective, and our written communications were highly secure. Um, so if you're working undercover, say in a warehouse in Union City, California, watching men pilfer the warehouse, that sort of thing, you have to communicate in some way, and they think you're another warehouse worker engaged in the pilferage. Well, you better have a secret way of communicating with your case officer.
Mhm.
And I was in a couple of undercover situations. For
Mm.
months, I worked in a aircraft plant as a trainee mechanic, but my real purpose there was to identify men using drugs and alcohol on the job and then installing engines in commercial airliners. Um, uh, I was interviewed by a man a couple of weeks ago, said, "Oh, well, you were a professional snitch." No, I wasn't a professional snitch. I'm a professional detective, damn you.
Yeah.
Um, do you wanna fly in a 747 where the ground crew was drunk and smoking crack while they put the engine in the bloody thing? No, you don't.
No.
Well, this was before we could do random urinalysis of transportation workers. So that was one undercover assignment. I had to change gears and get a stockbroker's license and go into a stock brokerage and be undercover in a stock brokerage after that. So, I go from blue collar to white collar just like that. Identifying a man making threats against management staff, identifying managers engaged in financial fraud so that they can be flushed from the company. Yeah,
Mm.
that's the sort of work I did as a
Mm.
Pinkerton man.
Yeah.
So I took the skills I learned in the army in the infantry as much as counterintelligence and the skills I learned in the Pinkertons, and I took that to the streets of Los Angeles.
Mm. Mm. Folks, we've been talking with Nils Gravelius. All of the stories you heard just now and more are in his memoir, which is coming out in June of next year. It's called The Last Lawman: True Stories of a Private Detective. We've also been talking with Nils about his works of fiction, which are several, and they're all being added to our reading list. They're also available on his website and on Amazon. Um, so we've had the pleasure of picking his brain about his career and some of the more topical issues, such as the Epstein investigation. I want to end off our conversation, Nils, with our reading list. Of course, we're adding your books to our reading list, but I'm interested to know, given your obvious vast experience and knowledge of crime books and crime novels, if there were one or two books that you would highly recommend to people? If they're the only ones that they could read in the genre of crime and true crime and crime fiction, which one or two would you put at the top of that list?
Two of a Kind by Darcy O'Brien about the Hillside Stranglers.
Hmm.
In Cold Blood by Truman Capote.
No.
The Onion Field by Joseph Wambaugh. The French Connection by Robin Moore. And The Century of the Detective by Jürgen Torvald. Those are all pretty factual books, and as far as novels go, anything by Raymond Chandler, Dashiell Hammett, Eric Ambler, and Earl Stanley Gardner I can't too highly recommend.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, we want to thank you so much, Nils, for being our special guest here. It's been a real treat talking with you. Real change of pace for our program, and hope people have really enjoyed this. And folks, if you have enjoyed it, please comment on it and share this conversation. Nils has a very wide following, and hopefully we're going to add to that, introduce people to some of his work, especially his books. So please share this widely if you can. Nils, I want to thank you so much again for being our special guest here on Grey Matter. It's been a real treat talking with you about your career in investigation and your really wide knowledge of a lot of things that most people don't know much about because we just haven't delved into them as deeply as people in your line of work do. So thanks very much for being our special guest here.
I want to thank you for having me on, Leighton, and I hope to be on again to promote The Last Lawman. I hope that all is well in the Dominion of Canada, and I want to thank your vast audience.
Well, we will have you back, and before you do, I'm actually going to read that book, and I'm also against your recommendation. I'm going to read a couple of your crime novels as well. So thanks very much for being with us. It's been my great pleasure.
Take care, sir.